Well, hello. This is for my assignment for diversity and inclusion in University of Illinois. My name is Marlon Solomon, and I opted to take the 7-minute video as opposed to doing the 1,000 words of typing, but I did copy and paste what we're supposed to be working on. So here we go. So we're supposed to write our self-reflection on the main elements of our cultural identity. So the purpose of this is to increase the self-awareness, cultures, and represent, shape your life and experiences, to increase empathy towards other cultures, to increase awareness regarding the representation of culture within society, to engender a self-critique process. All right, that makes sense. All right, this is what I don't like. All right, let's go into the how this works. Okay, so they said the guiding questions. How do you self-identify ethnically, racially, social class, gender, and sexual orientation? Well, my name is Marlon Solomon. I am half Nigerian and half African American. My mother is from Virginia. My dad's from Lagos, Nigeria. As part of my Lagos Nigerian culture, I have actually a product of colonization. So English as well as Lebanese can be found on in my past in Nigeria. As my African American side, as most African Americans, the history is lost, so I cannot identify with anything more than just we are African American. However, my mother has taken an African ancestry test and found out that she was also from Nigeria, ironically speaking. I do identify as a Black man, lower upper class in Nigeria, funny enough. The classes are different. Over there, I'm part of the upper class. And in America, I'm more of like lower middle, just hustling, hopefully trying to move up the ladder. I am a male and I am heterosexual. Are there any other parts of your identity that matter more than others? Well, I do have bicultural identity, as I said, mostly Nigerian, African, and African American, but my Nigerian side tends to overwhelm my African American side due to the fact that the cultural richness in the African American, on the African side, the Nigerian side, is of course way stronger and way, because it's directly rooted to Africa. So it is stronger and tends to overwhelm the African American side. However, my African American side is still very strong to me, and it's why I identify with a lot of racism and things to do with systemic racism. My mother grew up during segregation. She was born during segregation, and she was part of the first group of young people to be to reintegrate. When they started to integrate the schools. So that experience has given me a major part of empathy towards the African American community, as well as the fact that I have been. So I started an organization actually, which is why I'm taking this course, called the Afro-American Culture Initiative, in which I try to work on issues between African American and African immigrant communities, as well as just African cultural competency, African American cultural competency in general. So that's kind of where I guess parts of my identity lie. If anybody should ask me what cultures am I part of, most times I just say Nigerian. A Nigerian American, because it covers everything. When you start going into whether you're Nigerian, African American, and I do tell people that I'm bicultural, but I definitely, when you hear from me, or let's say I get a little upset, my African accent comes out very, very well. If you don't understand me, my African accent comes out very, very well, and you will be able to know that this guy is not a full African American. I'm fine with that, because insofar I identify with my African American self and know how to relate those inferences and what is missing in each culture, or what's better or what's not. I get to pull from both. So, but definitely, yes, if you ask me, I'd most likely say I'm Nigerian. When thinking about your racial ethnic groups, what places of origin do you identify your family and why? Now, this is where it gets a little complicated because, well, the African the Nigerian way is to definitely go with your father's lineage. Now, my father's lineage actually ends up in Lebanon, in Miazra, part of Lebanon. I can trace my father's lineage back to a Lebanese man, Michael Solomon, and he comes. Michael had Sarkis, who had Lewis, who had Patrick, who had me, and I have my son Jaheen. So the beautiful thing about when you think about my ethnic and racial roots, it's kind of mixed because obviously I identify as Black, but I do have Middle Eastern descent. And so that's where it kind of gets foggy. But in all, I consider myself to be Nigerian. And the Lebanese, actually, that actually traces back my Michael. Who knows when Michael was born? But obviously he was born most likely probably in 1860 or 1850, something like that, because his son, we know when his son was born. Sarkis was born September 14th, 1890, and we have his passport, so we know that. So we can, that's, and it's very good to know these things. So I know exactly where my family comes from, at least going back to 1890, right? So that's over 100 years. Have you ever heard any stories about how your family ancestors came to the place where you grew up? Yeah, so like I said, they moved from Lebanon, 18 something, obviously late 19th century. And they moved to Africa for business. Obviously they were taking an advantage of pre-colonial Nigeria. And through the African and all the Nigerian scene, my dad came over to America when he was in, in the late 60s. As far as my mom, I just know about, my great-grandfather was the grandson of a slave. I do know that. I know my grandfather on my mom's side, he fought in World War II. So those are things that I'm proud of. And where I grew up in Africa, grew up in Nigeria, and then came over here. So I do know a little bit about my past. So I'm not in typical African American because I do have a lot of historical, context to put myself in culturally. How did they come to where they are now? Well, I guess in the end of the day, I just say that it all boils down to colonization and slavery. My family in Africa is really mixed. Like I said, I have English on my paternal grandmother's side. Like my dad's mom, she's half English. My dad's dad is half Lebanese. So that's colonization, and I guess product of that. And then my mom, she's of course obviously a product of slavery. Are there any practices, celebrations, ceremonies, rituals, or holidays that your family continues to celebrate that reflect your place of origin or some other aspect to your heritage? As my Nigerian side, it's everything. Marriage, funerals, daily life, just all sorts of things, the way we eat, what we eat, how we take care of this and how we take care of that. These are all parts of the heritage. But one of the things I do like is that we do take from our Lebanese side is that all our names are, like, my middle name is my father's name, and that happens throughout. So my son's name is my first name. My middle name is my father's name. My father's middle name is his father's name. My grandfather's middle name is his father's name, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that how are they celebrated? Well, my Nigerian side, anything knows about Nigeria knows that everything is a big party. We like to have a lot of parties for everything. So that's how we celebrate everything. I know I have 7 minutes on this video, and I think I've probably gone maybe a little bit further than that. So let me just hurry up. How are the cultural groups that you had self-identified with are prescribed to reflected within your national and global culture? Mostly negative and history. Well, so consider media depictions. Well, for the most part, Black people, whether you're African, are considered negatively. African is supposed to be like less human, very prehistoric, very, uncivilized and primitive. So that's the African side, which of course is not correct. Africans all over the world are excelling, and in fact, that's what my paper is going to be about. And then, of course, my African American side is considered, is also negative. It's supposed to be full of drugs and, unserious people, lazy people. Just second-class citizens, not smart. These are a lot of things that are simply just, this is how we're depicted, with especially like a lot of Jim Crow imagery, showing Black people as apes and primitives. So that's how my groups are looked upon. How does it make me feel? Well, I mean, of course, I understand the negativity and why the negativity exists and the capitalist systems that these things are brought upon, which of course the doctor in the good course spoke about. But for me, it compels me into action. I started an organization, Afro-American Culture Initiative, www.afroamerican1.org, and we fight all these kind of depictions and systemic racism, and we're just making inroads into building an online school, which is why I'm taking this course, so I can increase my cultural competency. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Hey, give me a great peer review, and I look forward to discussing further. Thank you and have a great day.